for a regular city commission meeting. Let's start with the roll call, please.
Mayor Skidmore,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Allen,
Present.
Commissioner Kaler,
Present.
Commissioner Clayton,
Present.
and Commissioner Crowley.
Present.
Fantastic. We're all here in person or by Zoom, and so I want to welcome everybody here and also watching on social media. We'll begin the session with the invocation by Pastor Greg Hall, followed after our Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody, for allowing me the opportunity to pray. Lord, we look to you today. We thank you, God, for your living written word that teaches us that blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. And so, Lord, we look to you. I pray your blessing over this council. God, I know their heart's desire is to make wise choices that will lead to increased blessing for the great people of this great community. So I pray your blessing on them, that you would lead and guide them with wisdom. We look to you today and ask for your answers and your heart behind them. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Hall. Appreciate that. We'll go start with public comments. Do we have any signed today?
We have none registered.
Okay, none registered. And we'll skip item 7, so we'll go on to the consent agenda, which would be the minutes from the June 5th, 2024 City Commission meeting, the April Finance Report, along with the agenda approval. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Aye.
That motion carries. Next, on item 9, we have a declaration. At this time, I'd like to give the commissioners a chance to declare any conflict or communication they've had that might influence their ability to consider today's issues impartially. Hearing none, let's go on to item 10.
Item A, Safe Haven Baby Box.
Installing a safe haven baby box in Ottawa was mentioned during a public comments at a previous commission meeting. And I believe, Angie, are you here? That's you? Okay, Angie. I guess if we have some questions, we can address those to you if you want to come up, and we can. I think we all kind of read the materials you've sent to us, or we've gotten already through City Hall, and it's been a while since we've last visited with you. So I don't know if you have anything you want to add to the last time you were here to get started with.
Yes, I do. And actually, I think it's important that I summarize kind of how I've led up to this point, just because not everybody was present during every meeting. Okay, so basically, I wanted to just make it on the record that on January 17th, 2022, I did call the City Hall. This is just to summarize how I kind of got here. I asked about contributing money because I had some money for memorial for my daughter that passed away in 2021. And they directed me to the Ottawa Main Street Association because I wanted to do it at Haley Park. I emailed them and Facebook messaged them, and there was no response. On February 19th of 2022, the Ottawa Herald publishes an article seeking donations by the City of Ottawa for Luther Coates Memorial at the same park, Haley Park. Again, to this day, I have never heard back from the Ottawa Main Street Association. But that leads me to why I became interested in safe haven baby boxes. So the summer of 22, I first came to speak at the commission meeting during public comments and presented information about Safe Haven Baby Boxes organization, the process, the fees, and the cost associated with installation. I explained that my motivation was for a memorial for my daughter, and most importantly, to save babies' lives. Shortly after that meeting, City Attorney Blaine Finch reached out to me to inform me that the current safe haven law in Kansas didn't allow for any type of these newborn safety devices to be installed anywhere in Kansas. Therefore, for the next year, myself and a few others and several state representatives went to the Capitol and testified to get the law changed. We were successful in doing so in May of 2023. So on May 8th, I came and gave public comments again informing the commission of the new law change. which was effective July 1st of 2023, and I was going to start fundraising. At the time, Fire Chief Matthias also gave comment and showed his support. I had a fundraising account set up by Safe Haven Baby Boxes through QGive and emailed Mr. Silcott asking if there were any issues before I started fundraising. I started dispersing the QR code and fundraising in July of 2023, and we set up at our first event on August 6th at the Unity Festival in Legacy Square. Not only did we set up at the Unity Festival, but we worked concessions at the Garmin KC Air Show in Gardner. We were at the Ottawa Car Show, Ladies Night Out, the fire station's car seat safety event, Ottawa's high school homecoming block party. My mother-in-law held a garage sale with all proceeds going to this cause, and we had a raffle with the gun guys. On December 7th, we reached our goal of $11,000. However, when we contacted Safe Haven Baby Boxes, they informed us we didn't have a contract signed and that the price went up to $15,000 in November. After discussion with Joe Kelsey, the senior project coordinator at Safe Haven Baby Boxes, he said he'd honor the $11,000 price if we could get a signed contract by January 1st. Once Chief Matthias received the contract, he forwarded it to Attorney Blaine Finch. Blaine contacted me a couple weeks later and said the commissioners couldn't agree on the contract and definitely couldn't before January 1st because they only had one meeting left before the holidays. My understanding was that the issues would be discussed in January this year after the holidays. I then reached out to Attorney Blaine at the end of March, which we were able to connect on April 1st, only to find out nothing had been done and no negotiating had taken place. On May 21st, I contacted Joe Kelsey at Safe Haven Baby Boxes, and he informed me he would still honor the $11,000 program fee, at which point I gave him Attorney Blaine Finch's contact information to discuss the contract because Joe said the contract is negotiable. He also stated that there are almost 240 boxes installed across the United States that do not have problems with leasing the box. As of this Friday, there will also be 17 states across the United States that have a Safe Haven Baby Box installed. The next day, May 22nd, I received an email from Joe with Attorney Blaine's response. Thank you for reaching out. Before you spend any time on this issue, please understand that I will reach out to you if or when the city's governing body decides to have me do so. Until then, please know that I have your contact information and I will be in touch if appropriate. Yours, Blaine. My questions to the commission is, after you've had time to express opposition installing the box, opposed fundraising, and ample time to negotiate the contract, do you want to offer this option to our community to save babies' lives? And if not, why? And what do you have to say to the people who donated to it?
Okay, thanks for your comments. I'm a little confused because I'm looking at this House Bill 2024 that has some restrictions that can concern me. One is it's for infants up to 60 days old. What if someone brings an infant older than that? I don't know if that creates a legal issue or not. Also, the fact that part of it says the employees, which would be the fire department, I suppose, must inquire if the infant or parents are members of a federally recognized Indian tribe and record this information. And so there goes the anonymity that is supposed to be part of this, if I understand it. So I'm getting some conflicting information here. I don't know how.
Right, but I mean, that is how the bill is. There is a packet that is in the box, so it is up to the mother or the father or grandparent, whoever drops that child off, if they want to put that information in there. There is some children that they do not know. They are anonymous. The other important thing about that information in that packet is to help mothers find resources. They still have 30 days to contact. If they're in some crisis and they don't know about all the resources, they can call that hotline. It's a 24-hour hotline through the Safe Haven Baby Boxes organization that gives them other resources and options, whether it's, domestic abuse, just financial resources, just other options that they can talk to about why they came to their decision. It's not like they drop the baby off and then, I mean, some women may choose that option and not respond.
No. I just didn't know if whenever I see something written that the employee must, it concerns me a little bit that what if we don't? Are we liable in any way if we did not inquire as to the Indian tribe or record this information? So that's what kind of concerned me, just from the get-go. I'll pass on to the other commissioners if they have any questions. Or
Angie, for clarification, is that information available to the person dropping the baby off prior to dropping the baby off? Like, can they just get that information if they want it?
Yes, that's the thing about the that's the thing about having these boxes, is it actually makes more people aware of this, of the hotline, of the safe haven law. The problem that they've been seeing is they had the safe haven law in all 50 states, but they were still finding babies abandoned in horrible situations. And so that's the thing, is if you have a tangible device that actually you can recognize, you know, you're looking for the location and it pops up this hotline on, if it's on your phone, and that they have that option to call that number before they even do that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And there are none in Kansas, is that right, at the present time?
That's correct.
Okay, so that kind of makes me a little concerned about ever being the first of anything. We got a city of like Wichita, about 30 times our size. You would think there'd be 30 more opportunities, 30% more chance, or 30 time more opportunities for women to use that, and they don't have one there. How do you explain that we should have one in a town 1/30 the size of Wichita?
I think it's actually more important for rural areas to have them, in my personal opinion, because everybody knows everybody at some point. And that is where you find some women, they do not want that face-to-face eye contact because they're afraid somebody might know them. Or people will start talking about them for surrendering their child. And so I think that's what to me, I think you're going to find it more in a rural area, in a small community first, than you would see it in a city, because, you know, in a big city, there's a lot of resources around and they could drive to another location just, 10 minutes away and nobody will know them. But in Ottawa, somebody's going to recognize somebody.
And when you say that, that's why we do have drop-off places now at the hospital, the police station, the fire station. But that's what you're mentioning. The anonymity is what's prevailing thought for some of these ladies, I guess what you're saying.
Correct. And I will say, when you made that comment about the restrictions of 60 days old,
Yeah,
that's the safe haven law too. That's the actual safe haven law without the boxes.
So if someone turns one in, that's 90 days old, what do we do then? Or is there?
I'm not sure. We'd have to talk to Life Care and
Okay. See
yeah.
I don't know how we'll know how old the child is when they drop it off, because they're not going to leave a birth certificate or information we don't know.
Right, they're in that packet. They encourage the mother to leave the information for, as much information, if they've named the child and everything, and their birth weight, their name. Sometimes I think people are just thinking that this is just a place to I don't want the baby. But sometimes this can also be a crisis situation. Even, maybe a mother really isn't sure, but she doesn't know what to do, and say the baby was born at the hospital. But then she surrenders the child to get it out of a domestic situation. There's so many things beyond what I can even think of, that situations where I believe that these would be very, beneficial for the communities. And I know for a fact that there is a city that's about to install one here in Kansas. I'm not going to name that city, but they did receive a grant. So I know that it's well on its way here to Kansas.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Finch, could you help answer our mayor's question when it comes to that?
Yeah. I thought, go ahead, yeah. Because
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I think if when you have finished, when the commission's finished its questions for Ms. Malik, I'm happy to come up and give you kind of some commentary and history of the law, and we can go through those questions for you.
Okay.
So thank you for being here today. I definitely think this option is something that's great, you know, having somewhere safe to put these surrendered children. Do you have information on kind of ongoing costs with Baby Box as opposed to other vendors? I know I kind of read through some of their information and didn't see other vendors doing the same type of thing. Do you know, are they kind of the name in Baby Boxes, or are there other vendors who do the same kind of thing? Do you know?
There is in Arizona what they call a baby drawer. It's not necessarily the same type of thing. That box is designed only to be in the exterior wall of a hospital.
Thank you.
Sarah and Emily, you're on. Do you have any questions?
Sorry, this is Commissioner Kaler. No, I appreciate the passion in which that this topic is being presented to the City Commission. You know, and I know that I've known the presenter for years. I absolutely believe that every child has the right to be in a loving home, and I know that her heart is led to make sure that kids are in a really great place. So thank you for presenting this information and presenting this option.
Great, sir. Pro Tem Allen.
I don't have any questions right now.
Okay, all right, that sounds right. And I'm not sure if I have any other questions either at this point, so why don't we have our attorney talk about this a little bit as far as any kind of limitations, liabilities, and costs. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. I want to start by, on behalf of the city, expressing sympathies on the loss of Miss Malik and her husband's baby, their baby girl. And as a parent, and many of you are parents, I cannot imagine the pain and trauma of losing a child. And so I want to make that abundantly clear that we are talking about a life here, and I want to make sure that we express the appropriate sympathies for that. I'll start with the law. Kansas is a state with a safe haven law. 50 states have a safe haven law that started in Texas in 1999. Our neighbor Nebraska was the 50th state to enact a safe haven law. That Kansas did theirs in 2006. That allows for the relinquishment, is the legal term, of an infant less than 60 days old into, at the time the law was written, to an employee on duty at a police station, sheriff's office, law enforcement center, fire station, city or county health department, or medical facility. And medical facility under the statute essentially means a hospital. The laws provide immunity for the parent who is relinquishing a child in this way unless there has been great bodily harm delivered to the infant, and in that case a criminal prosecution can be initiated. The process would be that a child would be relinquished, handed to a firefighter, or left in a bassinet at the hospital or at a police station. The employee would take possession of the infant. They would ask questions physically of the person. Do you want to give me your name? Do you want to give me the baby's name? At the time, there was no requirement for asking about Native American heritage. I'll get to that in just a minute. And then the baby is taken to the hospital if it's not at a hospital, and assessed by doctors and nurses who actually make the determination under the statute of whether great bodily harm has been delivered upon the child. The child is then taken to DCF custody and treated as any other child in need of care, with one exception. If the non-relinquishing parent comes forward and says, this is my child, and lets the court know within 30 days, then they submit to a DNA test, and if that is established that they are either the child's mother or father as the non-relinquishing parent, then they can work through the system to maintain custody of the child. In 2023, as Ms. Malik said, as a result of her efforts and the efforts of others, the law was changed. As so many times it happens that a proposal is given to the legislature then can change it, and that's what happened. The bill that was introduced was not the bill that ultimately passed. On the House floor, amendments were added about additional information to be requested from a parent if they did any kind of safe haven relinquishment, but including using what the law calls a newborn safety device. And so as you hear me talk, you've heard a lot of different terms. I don't want to use any proprietary terms, so I'll use the term device. So if a child is left in a device, the bill then added these other lines of inquiry that were supposed to be asked by an agency who took in a child in this way. The law is clear that disclosure cannot take place of the relinquishment by an employee of the agency, which would be the city in this case. So you cannot tell someone, hey, we took in a baby this way. Reporting is to DCF in Kansas. It is not to the media. It is not to other places. DCF does keep statistics on the number of children who have been relinquished using the state's safe haven law. The last publicly available data I could find today was from 2008 to 2017. That was in a KSNT article, and that was 10 children across the state were left in the care or custody of fire departments, police departments, that are over a 10-year span, so about one per year. Most of those were not in our area, so Kansas City, Wichita, as you might expect, as the mayor alluded to, states or areas with more people, you see more of those things take place. So your first question, Mayor, was about the 60 days or less. Essentially, leaving a child over 60 days would not give immunity to the relinquishing parent in that case. And so if the parent could be found, they would be responsible for abandoning the child at that point. It would no longer be a legally valid relinquishment under the safe haven law. And for those of us who have raised teenagers, we know that the temptation can be real to drop those teenagers off. So the law says 60 days is the limit. So the legislature changed what was intended, and then after the bill was passed and we began to look at it, we also got the contract and took a look at that. And earlier this year, you'll recall that there was a conversation about the contract that was privileged, but the consensus at that time was to not proceed under the current restrictions in the law and the contract. And I want to talk about what those restrictions are that are concerning. Mayor, you talked about Native American heritage. That goes to something called the Indian Child Welfare Act, which is a federal law that is designed to respect the autonomy and sovereignty of Native American tribes in Kansas, and to make sure that children are not taken from native homes and adopted out into non-native homes without the tribe having a say in what goes on. And unfortunately, there are states like New Mexico where they have interpreted that to mean that if a child is left in a newborn safety device, their DCF employees are to go out and track down the parent who relinquished the child so that they can make this ICWA determination as part of the adoption. Now, New Mexico's legislature is taking up a law to try to change that interpretation, but understand that the interplay there of federal law and state law can lead to some very interesting interpretations and potentially interpretations that would undo the intent of the law and what's trying to be done. The contract requires the city to turn off its security cameras on the wall in which the device is installed, which would then create a gap in the city's security for a critical facility like a fire department. The fire station is not staffed 24/7. If there's a big fire and we call out all units, and we've had those in our community, the station may well be empty and the device unattended. A child left in the device at that point may be in there until such time as the fire department returns. It's to set off a silent alarm that rings at dispatch, but we could then be in the position of pulling firefighters off of a fire to go back to the station to deal with a relinquished infant in the middle of their primary job. The contract requires notification to the vendor of the relinquishment. As I told you earlier, the law prohibits that. So there's a clear conflict here between the two. The safe haven law requires transport to the hospital. And that has been the case since 2006, but be mindful of the fact that if an infant is relinquished at a city fire department or fire station, that child will then have to be transported as opposed to that device being maybe placed at the hospital which would be staffed 24/7, and where the child will immediately be taken. In other words, we might consider whether a step should be saved and a device installed at the hospital instead. The ongoing cost of maintenance is on the city, and the cost and the statutory requirements of testing are on the city, and they are not inconsequential. The fire department personnel must test the alarm system on the box once per week. They must have a visual check of the alarm system twice per day. And then they are to make sure that that alarm is ringing over at dispatch, not just inside the fire station if the box is open. There are other requirements, but I wanted to, those go to the testing. The fees, in addition to the initial fee, whether $10,000, $11,000, or $15,000, there's a $500 renewal fee that's paid every 5 years, because this is a lease, not a purchase, under the contract that we have been given. There's a $500 annual fee each year. There are what's called other associated expenses determined from time to time by the vendor, and that amount is not disclosed in the contract. The city is required to purchase signage from the vendor at the city's expense, marking the location of the box. And the vendor estimates between $5,000 and $7,000 for installation. And we do not have an estimate right now for what the installation might cost, but that's for the installation, alarm setup, and monitoring. If the city ever decides that we're moving that fire station, or we're not going to maintain the device at the fire station anymore, there is a removal fee. If the cost of removal are greater than $500, the city is responsible for those. If the device is damaged in any way, whether through vandalism, through nature, act of God, tornado, the city is responsible for those repair fees. The city is required to carry liability insurance, $1 million and $2 million in the aggregate, and a $2 million umbrella related to the device and its operation. The agreement is not governed by Kansas law, it's governed by Indiana law, which I've already told you there are some contradictions between the contract as presented and the law here in Kansas. And again, the contract requires reporting of surrenders to the vendor whenever that takes place, as well as the disabling of the security camera on the wall where the device is located. So for those reasons, I think the commission reached a consensus that this was probably not the way that it wanted to go at that point, and I communicated that when Ms. Malik and I talked in late April, late March of this year. Also indicated that we were in the process of changing personnel at the fire department in the chief's role, and that, you know, if we needed to revisit it, we would. And so when Mr. Kelsey reached out, I was somewhat surprised, but I did want to let him know that I had received his emails. But at that time, unless I'm directed by a majority of the city commission to take action on your behalf, I'm not authorized to go out and independently start negotiating a contract. At this point, commissioners, I think I've answered all three of the questions that were propounded. I would say that the options are to go from here in this direction. One is you can continue the course of saying, hey, we understand the desire and we appreciate it, and but we don't think, given the law, which was not what was intended by the folks who proposed it, and given the terms of the contract, which would require significant change and which are in some cases not in line with the law, that you're going to keep with your prior consensus and not proceed with installing a newborn safety device at this time. That does not mean it can't happen in the future. That does not mean it cannot happen at Advent, at the hospital at some point, or in a different location that may be more appropriate. The second option is to reverse course, direct us as staff to proceed with negotiating a contract and trying to find an acceptable contract. That will not change the obligations under state law, and that will likely not change the ongoing fees and the costs that will, according to my conversations with the city manager, likely come from the fire department's budget. And there is, as I understand it, through the fundraising campaign, there is not money for the ongoing costs. Those would be shouldered by the city and come out of general fund. And then the third option, because as I said, we are very sympathetic to the Malik family and what happened, was to say, is there an alternate memorial? Is there another way that maybe instead of using this money for a newborn safety device at this time, we could do something else to honor the loss of this family, something that would be helpful. And so I asked the city manager, I mentioned this idea to him, and he's kind of run with it and developed a concept. So there's a third option for you to say, we're not doing this right now, but let's work together with Ms. Malik and see if there's something else we can do with these funds that would honor her child and be appropriate. So those are kind of the three options before you today. And with that, I'll stand for any questions that the commission may have.
Okay. You may have any questions of Blaine?
Mr. Finch, you mentioned a lot about the issues, the liabilities possibly, but you never mentioned if something, God forbid, would happen to that child while it's in the box. Maybe the person dropping them off, they were already in ill condition. What's the liability that the city takes on at that point?
So the state statute gives immunity from liability if we follow the state statute, okay? But the concern, as you said, is still that an abandoned child, and maybe they're just ill and the parent doesn't know what to do. Maybe they have been abused. And, you know, in my mind, the turning off of the security camera, the inability to monitor that, if a child who has been abused to the point that they are in investigation, will kind of be starting from square one. So you also, in our case, our facilities are co-located, right? The police department is right across from the fire station, right across from the power plant. There's a question of, is a camera at the power plant, which happens to catch the wall that has the device on it at the fire department, is that in breach of the contract or not? I don't know, and I'm not trying to bring up a fanciful example. I'm just trying to say these are concerns that come up because all of our facilities are located closely together. And I think everyone is concerned. First, you don't want a baby to be relinquished or abandoned in bad conditions, but we certainly don't want a safety device to make it harder to find justice for a baby who may have been abused.
Good point. Any commissioner questions? I guess myself, I'm sympathetic to what Angie's bringing here. And again, Angie, my condolences to you. I've got 3 children, 3 grandchildren, and as Blaine said, it's unfathomable to think of losing one. And I think this is a interesting way, a very creative way on your part to remember your child with something like this. But I'm thinking maybe there's a different direction. I know it maybe sounds hard-hearted, but I'm a little concerned about, again, being the first city to do this. And I'm not saying I wouldn't be in favor of it forever, but if this other city does this where we find out, and a year or 2, 3 from now, and they love it and it's working great and they've been able to save a baby or 2, I'd sure look at it again. But for right now, I can't see the benefit. Now you go ahead.
Okay, just a few more things. Regarding what Blaine just said about not being able to see, it's not going to be any different if that baby was abandoned in a dumpster or in a field. If they find them, it's the same. You're not going to have cameras on them. You're not going to know who they are. It's going to start an investigation from scratch. The other thing is with putting the baby drawer from the ones like that in Arizona that are in the side of hospital, they do not have a hotline. So there is not that 24/7 that they could reach out before they surrender their child or relinquish their child. And as far as the money, the $11,000 that's already, I think it's like $11,741 that's already in this account. It is tied up with Save Haven Baby Box organization because they're a 501c3. And so in order to get that money back to the right people, they have addresses for a lot of those people, but a lot of these events, people were, throwing $5 here in a tip jar. So that money will just be with the Safe Haven organization. We can't get it back to those people. The people that actually use the QR code to donate, Safe Haven Baby Box organization will have to contact each individual to return the money to them and it has to be okayed through the IRS. Because I've already spoken with them about that.
Okay. So that's unfortunate. There's not a way to get it back for another memorial idea.
Right. I mean, this cause was, those people donated for this specific cause.
Right.
It wasn't to be used for anything else.
Okay, but were they aware of all these restrictions? I wondered about that too, because there seemed like with the law we've got, the restrictions we've got, that, unfortunately, they maybe weren't, and neither were we until we started studying this a little bit more.
Right, but it's a contract that's negotiable before you sign it. I mean, it's all negotiable. I talked to Joe Kelsey about it, and I specifically asked him, and he said that it was all negotiable. I mean, I'm sure there's things on there that we might touch base on that he would maybe compromise and not want to, completely take out of the contract. But, I mean, we haven't even had a chance to talk about what they are negotiable about and not.
Right. Okay.
Have you had a chance, or as you kind of were coming up with this idea, to talk to Advent at all as a possible location for it?
No, I have not spoken with Advent.
Okay. And that hotline you were talking about, is that all through Safe Haven, the organization? It's a specific number. It's not like an 811 or a 211, like a government-funded it's like a specific.
No, it's their hotline.
Their hotline, okay.
Yeah. The box is their box design is patented, and so in order to, they talk about these fees and everything, but they do a lot of with the hotline and the box, and so it's patented, and there's fees on that every 4th, 8th, and 12th year, and so in order to keep all that going and their organization, that's why they have fees.
Angie, can we dive a little bit more into the conversation about the hospital? Is there a reason why you hadn't had a conversation with the hospital yet?
This box is designed to be put in the side of a fire station. Not that it can't be put in the hospital, but no, I have not spoken to the hospital about it.
I just didn't know if in all the conversations that you've had, and I'm assuming it's just this box, do they make one for a hospital?
The baby drawers are specifically designed to be put in the hospital, and they cannot be put in the side of a fire station.
I just didn't know if in all the conversations that you've had, and certainly all the time that you've spent on this over the last couple of years, that you came to the conclusion that it was better to be in a fire department instead of a hospital. That's the only reason I'm asking, if maybe that's why you didn't have the conversation with the hospital yet.
Well, these were just designed to be put into the fire station, and that is where I pretty much stood with it, because Safe Haven organization, they helped us change the law. We used some of the other language that had been used in other states. They passed that information along to us, and so just because it was designed to be put in a fire station and we had the support from the fire station, that there was really no reason for us to go anywhere else because the fire station supported it.
Sure. Thank you.
Sarah and Emily, you're on if you have any more questions.
Mayor, I have a lot of the same concerns that others have mentioned, and thank you, Blaine, for the refresher on the conversations that we've had regarding the liability issues. Those are my biggest concerns. And I do think that I would like to see this happen, I think, in some other sort of way, like whether it be the hospital or some other situation. But I don't know that it's right to necessarily put that in the fire department with the restrictions that are in place. And I know that they're negotiable, but I'm not sure that we would get rid of all of the concerns.
Okay, thanks. Sarah, do you have anything to add?
No, I think everybody has handled the questions that I've had, and no, not at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I agree with Angie, though. I think I'd like to have that conversation with the representative and see how willing they are to negotiate. There's a lot of yearly fees, annual fees, 5-year fees. Please.
Well, when you talk about the fees, there is nothing set up for future fees. But I was going to say, like, we fundraised for this. It took us less than 6 months to get $11,000. So I'm not against, if I need to go out and fundraise again for $500 yearly fees or $500 every 5 years, which is, I mean, We actually have some people that donated to this that have done it through their employers because they are a 501c3. So they donate $250, you know, a $25 hour check for a few months, and then their company 100% matches it. So $250, you'd have your $500 fee. It's so that I'm not worried about the $500 fees if I need to come up with it myself. I don't know how long that would, you know, go on, but I'm just saying, like, I would be willing to reach out in the community or through, you know, people's employers and do it again. I mean, and it wouldn't be nearly as much needed at that point, you know.
I wasn't even going to ask you if you were willing to do it because I know your passion.
Yeah.
So I knew if that came up down the road that you'd be willing to go out and fundraise if necessary. So
Right.
I was more concerned about some of these other fees that were there that you've mentioned that this individual might be willing to negotiate. I'd like to at least sit at that table and I metaphorically speaking, sit at that table and have that conversation and see if they're willing to negotiate with us. And decrease some of those fees, then what are we,
Yeah.
why are we not for it?
I'd say similarly to Commissioner Crowley, I'm less worried about $500 fees. To me, the notification to the vendor, just being kind of low-hanging fruit that is specifically opposing to our law, following up on that specifically, because that, I mean, to me, it definitely seems like something that would be a bigger concern for me than a $500 every
Right.
few year fee. Like you had said, I think crowdsource funding or however that might look. Do you know what the lifespan, their estimated lifespan of a box is?
I
From
don't, and
install?
in fact, I have not even been able to read the actual contract themselves. They sent it to Chief Matthias, and which forwarded it to Attorney Blaine, and I am not sure. I have actually never been privileged to read the contract myself to even know what all it entails.
Okay. Yeah, I would just be intrigued if it's every 5 years. Are we on the hook for, you know, if it went from 11 to 15, is it going to be 20, then 30, you know?
Right.
What does that look like over 30 years?
Yeah.
Um,
That is a good question
just as a
for them.
potential thing, but as well, I'd like to metaphorically be, you know, at that table. I think find out what options are, specifically since your funds are tied with Safe Haven, or you, like you'd said, it's onerous for everyone at that point. So I think just finding out kind of what some options might be. You know, I'm in favor of this. I think if a baby's dropped in it in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, the money is a moot point. We hope one's never dropped in it, but if one
Right.
ever would be. And so I think figuring out some of those kind of things in terms of, you know, liability, the cost to the city, and then as well, you now with Fire Chief Dillon, you know, talk through what that looks like for his staff. How does that kind of work as well?
Counselor.
Just one thing I want to touch on, money given to a 501c3, it's my understanding that can be given to another 501c3 and still maintain the initial donation. I don't represent myself as a CPA, and we can certainly get you confirmation on that, but the fact that that charity may not be able to give it back to the donor does not mean that it could not be transferred to a local 501c3 if you decide to look at another option.
Do you know if it has to, you have to have permission from the donor?
And those donors that can be identified, it sounds like there's some that can be and some that cannot be, so.
What
we
if
can
they don't approve?
Talk through that, so.
But you still have to contact them either way. I mean, whether you're giving a refund or whether you are transferring it to another 501c3, you're still going to have to contact them, the IRS and them, to make sure that it's,
Yeah, it could be cumbersome. I know we did that through the YMCA. We took donations here for that, I believe, and the people they gifted to other 501c3s of their choice. But I don't know how many people were involved in that and what was involved in the mechanics of that, but I know that's possible to do that. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Well, I hadn't thought about this. I mean, it'd be a rare situation where all of our firemen are gone, but it could happen. And I guess the fact that the hospital, they are there all the time, and also the hospital's right there to check the baby for any kind of injuries. Firemen can look at a baby and think he looks okay, but are they really able to determine if the child's injured or abused in some way? Whereas at the hospital, they would obviously know that too. I guess my thinking is on this, if we did it at our fire station, I would rather wait a while to see how this other city and find out any things they came across. We don't know what we don't know. They may come across some things that would tell us, oh, we sure don't want to do that. But then we don't know until they go through the experience and see how it works. But if you don't want to wait, then I would suggest maybe look at the hospital as a possibility if they want to participate with this program. That'd just be another suggestion. But at this point, I'm not in favor of the city taking this on right now. I'm just one, but that's my opinion right now. And again, sounds hard-hearted, I know, but I'm just looking at the numbers, looking at the risk. I'm looking at the state House bill here, and I'm trying to put it all together, and I'm just kind of coming away with I don't think we can do this here.
Right.
Commissioner, go ahead.
Assistant Chief Wilson's here. I mean, do you have anything that you'd like to add to this? I know we had, sorry, Angie, he's sitting back there. I thought, we had Matthias's opinion, a year or so ago. I didn't know if you felt the same or if your opinion was separate, or, sorry to put you on the spot. But you were here. So.
I should have sat further. Wait, I was in the back row. I hate to speak for Chief Dillon.
Well, please speak for you.
We already are a safe haven, and I don't want to make it. I don't want to sound like we don't care, but in 20 years, I've never had one dropped off. I'm not saying it's not worth it. I would definitely look into it. Keep looking. I agree with have a seat at the table. Let's figure it out. See if we can work through the details. Are there other avenues that we could do? While I've never had a baby dropped off at the station, in my 20-year career, I couldn't tell you how many kids that I know in the community that need help. So is there another avenue that we could memorialize Matilda? And I just had a brief conversation with Angie, so I don't want to say that let's go for it, and unless whatever happens, happens. We need to do our due diligence, but I would love the opportunity to sit down with Angie and see if there's other avenues if, when we get that seat at the table, we're still not happy.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think, kind of as I mentioned before, I guess more officially, I would at least be willing to bring us to a table to discuss if, lack of a better term, irreconcilable differences. If we're unable to come to some type of agreement that would come back to us for another vote at that time. But I think it's well worth the time and effort it would take. And appreciate Attorney Finch in his time in doing that negotiation on our behalf, but what that would kind of look like.
Perhaps not a
Mayor
decision
Skidmore.
Today. I mean, it could be something we needed.
Mayor Skidmore.
Yes.
Hi. Hey,
Sarah, go ahead.
this is Commissioner Kaler speaking.
Yes.
I don't want to discount other partners in our community that may be a better space for such a box. There are individuals within the city commission and people that are in that room that are on the hospital board and could have some conversations. And so I'm wondering if we want to just make sure that we've got every stone kind of turned over before we move forward, because there just may be a better place for it in our community. It does concern me if we are turning off security cameras at our fire department and required to do so. That's security for our fire department. And I don't know that I'm willing to do that. And here's the thing, I don't think it's me choosing one or the other. I just think that there may be another option in our community for us to consider. And so let's just make sure we've considered all options before we go with this option.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. And that's what Angie, I do want to apologize it's taking so long to get to this day, and I appreciate your patience and calling us out on that. And I appreciate you doing that. It's something we need to decide one way or another. Maybe today's not that day, but it sounds like to me we've got some people that want to still put their heads to this and see if there's a solution. I'm reminded of that saying that no problem can withstand sustained thinking. And if there's a problem here, if sustained thinking will work, maybe we can come to some kind of resolution for this. I hate to think that there's a scared teenage mom out there that would be too afraid to go to the fire department or the police station or the hospital now and to be recognized. And I guess if they drop the baby off and run out, I don't know, they don't disclose their information. I don't know if they could do that or not. They might, but still the fact that I hate to think there's a situation out there, which there may be, that a mom would give up her baby in that kind of a situation. And you got something else to add?
Yeah,
Sure.
with that, I do know of a child here in the city of Ottawa that was dropped off on a social worker's porch about 11 years ago. And that was, I mean, she could have been charged with abandonment.
Yeah,
So, but that did happen here in Ottawa.
okay.
And when I went to the Capitol and spoke, there's with Chief Weissman, he was the fire chief at McPherson at the time. He had indicated of an incident where in 2008, they found a baby that was in a polycart dumpster. They were searching because some things weren't adding up about the mother and what happened to the baby. And so they were searching, and they just all over the town. And they finally found the child alive in the top of a polycart, getting ready to be picked up that day for trash.
Wow.
And so, and that's a small town too. And so I'm saying it does happen. And even though he hasn't had it happen here, I know of it in the 20 years that he's been here, it doesn't mean that it's not happening, and it's not happening all over the state, and we just don't know about it.
That's a good point. Yeah,
So,
all right, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Angie, thank you.
okay.
Well, why don't we at least table it at least and take it under further advisement? We got a lot of information we've accumulated today. Maybe we need some time to kind of let it sift through and digest it and see where to go with this next. But maybe there is a solution out there. We just don't know what it is today. So, but thank you for bringing it to our attention again, and we'll see what we can work out. So,
Mr. Mayor, if I may,
please.
instead of, I would at least like to either have an answer or give our attorney some direction.
Okay.
So it's either we make a decision to direct our attorney to have those conversations about some of the discussions, that with their representative, or we make the decision today that it's just not something we're interested in. One of the two.
Yeah, that's good.
Because I think at this point, if not, it could be another 3, 4, 6 months or whatever, and
Yeah, I don't
we're
wanna
back
do
in the
that.
same situation again.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, we don't
Yeah.
do that.
Mayor Skidmore,
Yes.
want to ask for clarification from Commissioner Crowley.
Please.
I guess I don't see it as only two options.
Sure.
Because again, I see that there are other community options that have maybe not been, not approached. So I don't know if it's yes, we are doing this, or no, we are not doing this. I really would like to put the option on there that says, hey, let's make sure that we're the right community organization to host this.
And Commissioner Kaler, I don't disagree one bit. I guess I was more saying if we were looking at possibly directing our city attorney just to have those conversations with their representative about the discussions about some of the things that they're offering or not offering, and in conjunction with that, maybe if Angie would be willing to have a conversation with the hospital about if that's something they'd be interested in too. That way we could be working side by side in a sense to try to come up with, she may go there tomorrow and ask them and they say no. So that answers that question. But at least we have our side of the table possibly working on, an answer to some of the questions that Angie's brought up today.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that might be-
Yeah, and I understand that point of view, but if the hospital were to say yes, and we've got our attorney working diligently on terms of an agreement, I think it's about just doing some due diligence out in our community, giving, Angie a month to reach out to a few community organizations that may be better suited for this particular box. And then if those come back with a solid no, then we move forward with some kind of review of the contract and negotiation of the contract.
And if I may, because both me and Commissioner Kaler have suggested that Angie would have that conversation. If I could ask that of you, would that be a conversation that you'd be willing to have with Advent Health of possibly putting that box, a box out there instead? And the only reason I'm asking once again is because I don't want to make that suggestion as we have, and then you're just, hey, I'm not willing to have that conversation, because I think the fire department's the one and only place it should be.
I am not against having the box be relocated at the hospital at all. I think it's important to have the box over anything more so than my personal preference, but I will not be the one that communicates with the hospital about it.
Okay. Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
Okay, hey, Angie, who would you suggest would be the one? I mean, you're the one that's passionate about this, and you're the one that knows truly way more about this than we do. And so, I mean, I don't feel like I could do it justice to have that conversation when you're the one who knows really everything about this. And it's your concept, and
Right.
it's your idea.
Right, and I'm the one who raised the money for the city of Ottawa to put the box in, but it's you guys are the ones that are deciding not to put it at the location that I preferred. And so if that changes, I don't know if one of you guys went to ask them or the city attorney. I'm not sure who wants to have that conversation with the hospital board, but unfortunately, it's not going to be me.
Well, and I understand Commissioner Kaler's concern there, because I can't have that conversation. I don't know enough about it. And I certainly don't want to, misinform them, and then them making, a decision that, that people may not like just because I don't give them the right information.
I don't know if somebody from the public in the community that's passionate about it also, that maybe contributed, would like to go and talk to them, or if any of you guys know someone on the board that could, or, that you could reach out to. I'm not sure.
Well, I'm also looking at other people that have donated to this. Perhaps they would be willing to. I don't know.
Right.
That's another idea for you. But I guess that's for your job to find out best person to communicate that to the hospital, really not ours. Stuart, you have something else?
Yeah, I do. If you would allow, I would be honored to meet with her and find out more about it. And I know some people down there that
All right.
I would be willing to have that conversation with them.
Angie, that sounded good?
Yep.
Maybe a
Thank you,
resolution
Stuart.
for it? Okay, thank you, Stuart. All right. Well, thank you again Angie, for your presentation. Did a good job on that, and we'll let that go where that goes. I guess at this point, it looks like nothing at City Hall at this time, although I'm not saying no forever. I'd like to say just maybe wait and see how this other city does, and then maybe we can change our mind 2 or 3 years from now if no one does it. So that's what my point is. Anyone else have any, I don't know if this needs a motion or not, but we can just, a consensus?
Well, and Mr. Mayor, I was going to make the motion that we direct our attorney to have those conversations with her representative. At least that way, we can vote on that, and if this decision is made for that to happen, then he moves forward. If not, then we know we have an answer at this point.
And what more can we accomplish with that? I'm trying to understand that part.
I'm the same way. I think that will give us information because without that, we're kind of at a no.
Okay.
Regardless of what happens with the hospital, I think this would give us an option of maybe being a yes. And the hospital might also be a yes. And then from there, it could also be a discussion. I think it gives us room to kind of work. We don't know what the negotiations, I guess, will turn out, if they'll be fruitful or not, in terms of that for us. But I think similar to Commissioner Crowley, would like to see that just communication, if an agreement can be made.
Okay.
Mr.
Counselor,
Mayor?
any questions on that? Oh, go ahead, Sarah.
This is Emily.
Emily, go ahead.
I was just going to ask Commissioner Crowley if it would be anything that he would consider in his motion, or if it's anything that anybody's interested in, that we give the direction to discuss or do the negotiations after we hear back from the answer from the hospital. I know there are other community partners, but that's probably the most likely one. So I didn't know if anybody would be interested in directing it to be after we hear back from the hospital. If the hospital is a no, then we negotiate.
Well, and Mayor Pro Tem Allen, I didn't technically make a motion. I just wanted to kind of put that out there that I was going to, so we could at least have that conversation. At this point, and I believe I just saw Angie shaking her head, that I think that'd be okay, to maybe have that conversation with Stuart. He has that conversation with Advent, gather that information first, bring that back to us, and then we can possibly move forward on the other avenue. Okay.
So that would take no action in this case, and so
Yep.
we'll just kind of let it sit there. Okay, again, Angie, thank you very much.
Thank you, Stuart.
And Stuart, you bet. Item 11.
Item A, amending resolution of intent for sales tax IRBs for the Hasty Awards expansion.
This amends the original resolution of intent to extend the date for completion of the project and use the corresponding sales tax exemption. The completion date and sales tax exemption would be extended from July 1, 2024 to December 31 of 24. And Tyler Ellsworth is with us. Hi, Tyler.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. This item on your agenda and the next item on the agenda both relate to the expansion of Hasty Awards' existing facility. And there are references, I think, in some of the slides to Big Bear, or maybe Big Bear Enterprises. That's an affiliate of Hasty Awards. So this first item, the recommendation is to consider adopting a resolution which would amend the resolution of intent for industrial revenue bonds, which are really, in this case, not used for true financing. The bonds are really just a mechanism to provide the company a sales tax exemption on materials and equipment that they're purchasing for their expansion. Just by way of background, this item and the related item, which relates to a property tax abatement, were brought before you in September of last year. And that was the point at which these resolutions of intent were adopted. And since that time, the company has been working on their expansion. I think the fact that I'm here before you today shouldn't be construed as any kind of negative reflection on the company or the project. It's just that the timing of them using their sales tax exemption is beyond the July 1st expiration date of those resolutions of intent. So that's why we're here. My understanding is that they're actually moved into the expanded facility or about to move in already. It's not like they're behind in schedule. It's just sort of a timing of when those expenditures are made.
Okay.
And I think I just covered all of that. There are no financial considerations. There's really no financial impact to the city to extending the resolution of intent either for this IRB, which is for the sales tax exemption, or the next item. Legal considerations, the amending resolution was prepared by your bond counsel in coordination with the city attorney. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions, but again, the recommendation is to consider adopting the amending resolution.
There's no added cost to this to the city. This is just merely a formality to approve this.
That's correct. And the extension is from July 1st through the end of 2024, again, just so they can use the sales tax exemption.
Sure. Sounds good. Okay. Anybody have questions of Tyler on this?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, go ahead.
I move that we approve the item that we have on I'm making motion, sorry.
I got
Let me
it.
try this again. It's my first
You got
time.
it. First time.
That we approve item 11A on our agenda.
Very good. Is there a
I'll second.
There's a second on that. Was that to you, Sarah, or Emily?
Emily,
Emily,
sorry.
very good. Any other discussion on that? If not, let's have a roll call vote, please.
How do you vote, Commissioner Crowley?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Clayton?
Yes.
Commissioner Kaler?
Yes.
And Mayor Skidmore.
And I vote yes, that motion carries. Thanks. We'll move on to item, looks like 11B.
Amending resolution of intent for property tax abatement for the Hasty Awards expansion.
This amends the original resolution of intent to extend the date of the completion of the project. The completion date will be extended from July 1 to December 31 of 24. And Tyler.
All right, and I don't have much to add on this item. Same project, same time frame, but this piece is related to the property tax abatement instead of the sales tax exemption. But again, the recommendation is to consider the amending resolution.
Well, we're certainly happy that Hasty Awards is expanding their operation there and adding employment, so this is a good thing we're doing, and I'm very much supportive of it, so I appreciate them doing this. Is there a motion on 11B?
Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner,
I'll make a motion to approve item 11B as listed in the agenda.
and is there a second?
Second.
Sarah Kaler will second.
And okay, Eric beat you. All right, any other discussion on this? If not, let's have roll call vote, please.
How do you vote, Commissioner Kaler?
Yes, I'm going slow because Eric beat me.
Sorry.
Commissioner Crowley?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Clayton?
Yes.
And Mayor Skidmore?
I guess it was mutiny on the council and commission here, so we've got, I'll vote yes to that motion carries. So thank you all for bringing that to us. Tyler, good to see you. Don't
Thank
make
you.
yourself so absent so much of the time. Come back and
All
see
right.
us, just for fun sometime.
That's right.
All right, you do that anytime. Great, thanks, Tyler, appreciate it. Move on to item C, 11C.
Recommendation to add 7 properties to the Neighborhood Revitalization Program.
The Neighborhood Revitalization Program Committee has reviewed the applications and recommends that they be added to the program. And we have, oh, Ashley's up.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. Tonight, I bring to you 7 residential structures to be added to the Neighborhood Revitalization Program. Sorry, I had to figure out the thing. I haven't used it. So it's recommended that the City Commission adopt the... No, I went backwards. See? I don't know how to use it. There we go. Okay, so it is recommended that the City Commission review, comment, and consider approving the recommended 7 residential properties into the Neighborhood Revitalization Program. If anybody isn't aware, that program was established in 1997. We have agreements between the City of Ottawa, the county, and then the USD 290. Each board member, or each, the city, county, and USD 290 each has someone representing those organizations on the board, and they did review these 7 properties and agreed that they should be presented to you today to be accepted into that program. And nope. There. I've listed out the properties here. We have 5 new residential addresses. They would receive 95% for that 10 years. And then 2 are actually remodel addresses, which would receive the 95% for the 5 years. Financial considerations for this, I did include it in the packet, which would be the city's portion, just so you guys could see that. It looks like the portion for the years 1 through 5 would be $3,372.92. And then $3,116.56 for years 5 through, or sorry, yeah, years 6 through 10. Over the expected total for these 7 properties over the 10 years would be $32,447.36. There's no legal considerations, I guess, as to prove to form, so I do stand for questions if you have any.
And that, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, any questions?
That 32,000, that's just the city's portion? correct?
That's correct, yes.
And that's just a projection. We don't know exactly what it will be, but it's a projection.
That's correct as well.
All right.
Ashley, are we the last ones to sign?
No, I have not sent it over to the county yet,
And
or
how-
the USD
And
290.
how long have we been, have these applications been out?
This would just be for this year.
No, but do you know roughly when these applications were applied for?
It would be in the packet. They would have been just this year's actually, because I did bring the rest of those to you guys in January for the last of 2023.
And the only reason I ask that question is 5 of these properties are for sale, and I've brought this up before. 5 of these properties for sale. The majority of them are built and probably on the market, if not soon to be on the market,
Not as of when I looked right before the meeting.
but soon, I'm
Yes,
assuming.
that's correct.
And it puts and I know it takes time, and Commissioner Kaler could certainly help me out with this. It puts the seller in a peculiar position, because they're advertising that they get neighborhood revitalization and a tax rebate over the next 10 years. And we've never not approved one, but there could be that one, and if that ever comes about, then, like I said, it puts them in a peculiar position to say that they're gonna get it, even though they don't actually have it. And so I guess what I'm asking, and Commissioner Kaler, if you could help me out here, please, is there a way to speed this process up?
This is Commissioner Kaler speaking, and I get what you're saying, Commissioner Crowley, and I absolutely understand what you're talking about, kind of the speed of the process. The reality of it is that because, I'm just going to pat Ashley on the back here. She is dealing with trying to get 3 commissioners from 3 different governing bodies to come together to sit in the same room and have a conversation about that. And so that's 3 different schedules of people who all have full-time jobs. And so the reality of it is that we just can't meet every month. It just can't happen. And if it does, I can't commit to taking a vacation day every month to do neighborhood revitalization. And I don't think that taxpayers want, someone to do that. But I don't think this is extremely tardy. I get what you're saying. I think that probably a best practice would be for us to see it every quarter or, 3 times a year. But those individuals they should not be promising neighborhood revitalization. At any moment, the city could decide to make a change. This is not something that is guaranteed. Certainly something that is amazing, and I love it, and I love that it has made our community look better. Neighborhoods, it just builds them up. But no builder should be promising something because we don't have any control. After it leaves us, we don't have a control when it hits the counties, when they're amidst their meeting, and when it hits the school board's meeting. We have 0 control over that. So we're not in control of all the processes. But I don't have a problem with doing it, 3 times a year, 4 times a year. The reality of it is I don't think we can do it any more than that.
Yeah, and certainly I wasn't asking that, and I understand, I don't want you to have to take a holiday in order to do this. I guess I'm glad to hear you say that no builder should be assuming, because the assumption is that it is going to be approved and they are going to get it. And quite frankly, some of these folks are building in certain places in our town because that's part of what's I guess baked into their building and their construction costs.
So, and I also want to reiterate that the program itself, even if it is accepted, it is up to the taxpayer to make sure that their taxes are paid on time. And that increase does meet the 25%. Because if that doesn't happen, then they would not qualify for the program even after all 3 organizations do approve it. So.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
You go ahead.
If the person that purchased it doesn't make their pay their taxes on time, it goes away. Is that what you were saying? I'm sorry.
It all depends on how that falls. So if the builder builds that and it does not sell after,
Sure.
so then whoever pays those taxes on that property needs to make sure that they are paid on time, because if not, then they would be dropped from the program.
Sure, and I understand that, and that's kind of a totally separate subject that I'm talking about, because I guess with interest rates the way they are and mortgages where they are, some folks think because they're being told by realtors buyers that they're going to get this $3,372 back every year. So they kind of integrate that into their, hey, I'm going to get a check for $3,372. I kind of integrate that into my payment in a sense. And if that check doesn't come, and not because of they don't make the payment, but because of it's not approved, then that may put them in a position where they can't make their payment at all, and then we have a vacant, home again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's right. On these meetings, they don't have to all be there at the same time, do they? Can they just come in and sign and go?
I would like them all to come together. It would make it easier for them to discuss those properties.
Okay.
Because usually when we do have a meeting, the last one, there wasn't, I made the meeting and then things came up. So I did have them do it electronically. But there are a lot of discussions that each one of them have.
And rightly so. If there's a question, I think it's good.
Yeah.
But- Okay, I wasn't sure.
I would be against us not meeting, and I'll full disclose, I wasn't able to come to the last one. It just wasn't able to happen. And so I missed those discussions, and those are discussions that are necessary to further the collaboration among the boards of the city commission, the county commission, and the school district.
Okay. Well, I'm looking at one back in this date of December 15th, so that's more than a quarter. This is the second quarter past that date, so that's what I'm kind of thinking, is to speed the process up whatever, however we can. And if it needs me to have meetings, or maybe, I don't know. I just wonder if the mayor could be an alternate, Sarah, or we work this out somehow there. If you can't make it, maybe I can make it. I've got more time on my hands than you do, so I could certainly be an alternate. Maybe we need to do that in the future on this case. This is an idea.
Yeah.
I'd like us to talk more about that maybe in the future, but honestly, this program is not broken. This program is not broken.
Oh, I agree.
And
It's a good program.
I can't make today because my daughter's at freshman college orientation.
Sure, I
There's nothing
understand.
I can do about that.
understand that.
And I'm not sorry for not making the meeting.
No, I don't
And
blame you.
I really don't want you to feel like you have to swoop in and fix it because I'm at my daughter's college
No. I
orientation.
I know.
And so, that, please don't consider making changes on this. Ashley does a great job. And I understand what you're saying. Things just happen.
Sure.
And this is a great, incentive for builders, but we are not responsible for the builder's bottom line. Nobody else is responsible for my budget. Nobody else is responsible for anybody else's budget, and we're not responsible for the budgets of the builders. So we certainly want to be good partners with them, but we also have to remember that they can't promise things that are not within their control.
I do think in us being a good partner, it would be unacceptable for them to take this long to get information to us for any building. Obviously, I just think something shorter than the 6 months, kind of like or Commissioner Crowley was alluding to. I do think it's hard because we put the burden on them to have documents in a lot faster than that. I would just like to see us, maybe it is quarterly, just something a little faster turnaround from things in January.
I will be happy to try to make that work, yeah.
And please don't get me wrong, Commissioner Kaler. I'm not at all suggesting this program's broken. This is a great program. I love the fact that hundreds of folks over the last few years have utilized this program. Our community looks substantially different, especially in places that you thought building would never occur. These 5 properties that we're talking about today is a prime example. That's more where trailers are at, and now they're single-family homes. It's made this part of our community look way more wonderful. So I'm excited about it, love it. The fact is, I guess that houses are going up in 60 days, 90 days, and they're the way they build, they continue to build is that they sell and they move on to that next one, and it unfortunately it is a selling point that folks are using, that they've applied for NRP. We've never once turned one down, so hey, you're going to get it, and folks kind of look into that as part of their financing, when they make that purchase. So I guess it's more education. I hate to say it, Lucas, but it's more your department that may have to educate those builders that are coming in to say, hey, it's never been turned down, but there's a possibility, and don't rely on it. Hopefully you get it, but it may not happen.
Yeah, I never make any promises with the builders when they turn those in, so.
That's
yeah.
good. All right, Director Neese, you have anything to add to that, or you're here?
Just appreciate the work that Ashley does
Right.
in shepherding this program.
I agree, that's a good program. All right, do we have a motion on item 11C then?
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner,
I'll make the motion to approve item 11C as listed in the agenda.
is there a second?
I'll second.
There is a second. Any other discussion on this?
Yes, there's discussion.
Go ahead.
This is Commissioner Kaler. I want to be very clear. I actually just went back through all of my emails from Ashley, and I don't want this conversation to seem punitive to Ashley. It is not. From my point of view, this is not punitive to Ashley. She was doing her due diligence. She has been trying since April to try and get commissioners that sit on this board together. April, people. She's not delayed on this. So I want to be careful about being punitive to one of our employees because she's not doing anything wrong. And she's not holding the bag. She's not sitting with it and just going like, we'll get to it in another month. She's working on this stuff. And so I appreciate what Ashley's doing. Thank you, Ashley. It's not easy to work within this program, and it's not easy to try and get schedules together for everybody. But thank you for what you do for this program.
And thank you, Commissioner Kaler, for saying that. And Ashley, I'll tell you from this commissioner, I hope you didn't feel that way, that what I was talking about. And if you did, you have my cell phone number. You can call me up later and cuss me out. Okay?
No, I appreciate you guys working with everyone, and I love this program, so I'm glad to do it.
I think we all agree, totally. All right. Ready for a roll call vote, please?
How do you vote, Commissioner Clayton?
Yes.
Commissioner Kaler?
Yes.
Commissioner Crowley?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Allen?
Yes.
And Mayor Skidmore.
And I vote yes, too. The motion carries. And I guess it's subject to the final one signing off, right? The other commissioners have not signed off, the county. Okay. Subject to them signing off, too. Or at least we're approving our portion of it, right? All right. Is it dinner time? Okay. Let's go on to item D, review of the 2025 operating budget special revenue funds. And did we have the report for the finance department first, or you? I thought I saw it here.
It was in consent agenda.
Oh, it was. All right. We got,
Yep, that was just a monthly report in the consent agenda
We're good. We're good.
for each month.
I got
Okay.
some questions, but we can
Great.
get to it another day. So you go right ahead.
Oh, okay. Okay.
We can talk.
All right. Well, thank you. I know it's been a longer meeting already, but I do want to move through some of these funds with you as part of our budget process. And I do think that these are probably, well, I might just jinx us, but they probably are some of the more shorter conversations because they are special revenue funds, and each of these funds have a special purpose, which means they have dedicated revenue or special expenditures or types of expenditures that can even be that can even come from these funds. So we have a few to move through, and then we do have a few more to bring to you at the next meeting next week's, which is indicated on our calendar as well. So the first one we'll talk about is our airport fund, and our airport fund is one where the revenues that come into us, we use a fixed base operator, and one that where we get a portion of the revenue that comes into them, a small portion of the revenue that comes into them. They keep the remainder. We do pay a contracted amount to that FBO, and then our expenditures are very limited in the airport fund for the operations of the airport itself, the way that that contract is structured. The biggest items that come out of this airport fund is really our match for the grants that are supporting the construction efforts at the airport. And those are timed and paired with FAA or KDOT grants for the projects that are being done out there. So the first one, and the one that we've talked about multiple times this year, and that you saw in your CIP, has been the design for the reconstruction of the taxiway, and the that design is nearly done. That is an FAA grant. That I'm sorry, that's an FAA. I got it backwards. I'm sorry. That one is the KDOT is the design. Thank you, and that is a 95% split for our portion of that grant, and then the reconstruction will be a grant through the FAA, and that will be a 90-10 split. At least that's what we know at this time, and that's how we have budgeted for our expenditure for that construction project. Because the design's done, you'll probably see those bid documents coming out for that construction project over the next couple of months. But in reality, the way that we've budgeted for this fund is that the payments for that construction will likely begin in 2025. And so when we look at those financials, you'll see that larger expenditure coming all at one time in 2025, and then an offsetting transfer in from the general fund. So the airport fund does not have enough revenue or a dedicated revenue stream coming to that fund other than a transfer from the general fund to offset any revenue that they receive from fuel sales or rental As part of that contract for the FBO, we do receive a portion of the rental of the hangar spaces, and then we do receive 100% of the lease of the property, or the rental of the property for mowing and such at the airport. But really, those are the only revenue sources to offset some of our grant match expenditures. In the highlights, we talked a little bit about the match in '24 for the design, the match in '25, and then beyond that, what we're proposing to you in these financials is that there's probably not going to be another project for a year or two for two reasons. One, we need to rebuild the fund balance from our transfers into this fund, but also we need to rebuild after this large project with FAA. There's a set amount of money that comes into that fund annually for use towards projects like this, and we'll need it to rebuild to a point where it's capable of funding the next projects that are identified on the airport master plan. On the
A quick question
Sure,
on
sure.
the airport, on, let's see, page 62, it looks like other rents and leases, I assume that would be the farm lease? Maybe Michael knows that? Okay, I saw it, okay, I saw it started out a couple of years ago, about 14,000, is down to 10,000.
Yes.
I just didn't know if we're getting appropriate rent for that farm, and like we bid it out each year, if I remember right, in the past.
The amount that you saw in 2023 was catch-up rent from a prior year.
Oh, was it?
And then,
All
so
right.
this is the standard,
10,000, about 10,000 a year.
yes.
And you know how many acres that is by chance, Michael? Just hold up some hands, numbers.
Not off the top of my head.
All right.
I'm sorry, Mayor.
That's all right. I just know rents are usually between $75 to $80 an acre. If we're in that range, I'm happy with that for Franklin County, but,
I think we're close.
all right, good. All right, thanks.
And we do have two different leases on that property.
On the farm,
Mhm.
okay, all
The
right.
farming, yep. On this screen, those are some of the points that you'll see in here in those financials. Within this is the revenues that we talked about. The transfer in, I want to talk a second about that. Because of the large expense in 2025 for the reconstruction project, it will require us to increase our transfer from the general fund to the airport fund in 2025. And we had been in the prior years, or a few years back, we were contributing somewhere around 56 or 58,000 from the general fund to the airport fund. Then we had bumped that up to around 85,000, and we had planned to keep that fairly consistent. But that was at the time when we thought that this project might happen over a couple of years as opposed to all at one time. And so in order to make sure that we have the available cash to make those payments, we'll need to up our transfer from the general fund from the 85,000 to 175,000. What you see as a result of that is if you look at the fund balance graph towards the bottom, you see where we've got a large spike in expenditure, large dip in the fund balance all at one time, and then it kind of levels out. But where it levels out is really at a low end balance, and that's over the next couple of years. We'll need to determine how and when we're moving towards the next project in that airport master plan, and determine what those transfers need to look like to make sure that we can be prepared for that to happen on time.
And Director Landis, in all likelihood, that's to be taken from essentially unencumbered fund balance, correct? Is generally speaking, because of just the property taxes in, property taxes out for operations, correct? Generally.
Generally, yes.
Just wanted to
yes.
make you aware of that when we have the general fund discussion, so to understand where that would like where it's coming from.
Yes. One other comment on this fund I wanted to make, and I think we've had this discussion in past years. We do have a current debt issuance related to the airport build of the 10-unit T hangars, and that is a 2017 bond issue, and that pays off in 2027. Those expenditures are not shown here in these graphs because those are debt payments made from the debt service fund. So they come directly from property tax payments because this doesn't have the revenue source to support those. I think with that, do you have questions about the airport?
Questions, anybody? Guess we're doing good.
All right, our next fund is the Special Parks Fund. Again, this is a special revenue fund in which it has limited revenue sources. Those revenue sources are, it does receive 1/3 of the liquor tax that comes into the city. It does have a revenue line for the service line warranty program that was, at whatever time that program was set up, was determined that it was going to come to this fund to support park build. And then also it receives the park fees for any subdivision that has not dedicated parkland or park ground back to the city when platted. Then there's a $300 fee for each one of those permits for the build on those properties. On the budget highlights, we've noted a couple of things here. The very first one is the splash pad, which you know is just recently opened. That is funded partially from the Special Parks Fund and partially from our ARPA funding. And that was done by design to make sure that we had enough funds available to be able to accomplish a portion of that project. The other current project is the City Park Playground. And it's noted that in the budget highlights, we still reflect the $62,500 for the surfacing. That is, we were waiting on the grant to get approved to be a match for that surfacing part of the project. As a note, the playground equipment itself was actually ordered in 2023, and we did receive a 50% grant from the organization that we ordered that from for the purchase of that playground as well. That is ready to get started in the first part of July. And so you'll hear more about that on our capital project report next week. On this screen, if we're looking at the funding overall or the revenues and expenses, there's a couple of items to bring to your attention. So as we've talked in some of our other utility funds, we do budget for a reserve, and what we've designated here is a designated stability outlay within the capital line items. And we do that because sometimes there are expenditures, and especially with park equipment, for safety reasons and other reasons that you may not know are going to come your way. You want to make sure that you've given yourself adequate budget authority to be able to make those expenditures without having to wait for a budget amendment process to do so. In addition, there is a designated amount of $65,000, which we've been reserving for the last couple of years since we sold those lots at Lakeside, and that was those dollars were at that time determined that they would be held aside for future park improvements at Lakeside. So that's the amount that you see there. And I think those are all of my notes for special parks, unless you have questions there.
Okay. Special Parks, any questions?
Director Landis, some of that funding, as it states in here, comes from the park fees for newly developed properties. Are those properties, it's part of the permit fee, I'm assuming, right?
Yes.
So are they only designated for a certain area to develop that certain area of parks, or is it citywide?
So I'm glad you asked that question, because I think originally, and I don't know the history of this, if I'm just being honest, in the revenue line items, you see that they are designated by basically quadrant of the city. I cannot say that that's how they're being spent necessarily. Although we have not, for example, I don't know that you would have been able to accomplish the splash pad and the City Park Playground had you waited for enough money to be generated from that section of town through park fees. So I don't know. So I guess the answer would be no, that's not actually happening. They are set aside in the revenue line items. We can go back and do more research on that if you
And use citywide?
like.
Is that what you're saying?
And I'm sorry.
And use citywide?
And use citywide, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping for.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. Other questions on special parks?
Ready to move on? Okay.
All right, our next special revenue fund is special streets, or sometimes referred to as special highway. And this one is a couple of points I wanted to make on the revenue sources here is that we do, we have revenue coming in from fuel tax, but we also participate in the federal funds exchange program through the state. It's actually federal dollars that flow through a state program back to us as a reimbursement for prior year's expenditures on authorized types of expenditures. So certain types of expenditures can be reimbursed to us at 90% the following year. So from a previous year's expenditures. They don't have to be actually planned projects that you might find in a CIP. They can be expenditures related to maintenance and repairs as well. Those are really our only two revenue streams for this fund, and typically, you've seen in our CIP and standard $250,000 dedicated towards street maintenance. What we've determined is that that we want to have a plan for how that's going to be used, and this year, and I think you've heard from us on this before, is that we've purchased a software that will help with the pavement evaluation so that we can determine how to prioritize those maintenance projects. And that really this fund in the past has been used for some maintenance. It's been used to for some larger projects, but only when enough cash existed. And really, the amount of money that comes into this fund is never going to easily support the really large reconstruction projects or construction projects for streets. So what we have targeted this fund towards is the street maintenance portion of that. When you have large street projects, we will have to talk about what that funding source is going to be in the future. Largely, it could be geo debt paid from your debt service fund and property taxes assigned to those projects. But for now, the pavement analysis or evaluation will give us an opportunity to put together a maintenance plan going forward. So we should be able to know or be able to answer the questions about what's getting done next and using these dollars and plan more effectively. So when you look at these tables here, and it looks like we have a really high fund balance at the $800,000 or $900,000, and that's because we haven't been able to effectively use it towards the large projects that needed to be done over the last couple of years. Because while that seems like a lot of money, it's not enough money to accomplish any one of those really large street projects that need to be done. So moving this fund in the direction of the street maintenance and maintaining those streets before they get to the point of needing the much larger repairs is really our hope for this fund.
So I was wondering about as far as $250,000 for street maintenance, is that enough? I see we've got that, we've had it for several years, not counting inflation, and we still have it projected out. And I'm just thinking about, is that adequate amount?
Well,
Michael?
And I might just comment before he gets here. So the purpose of that evaluation system is so that we can put together the plan and know what you'll need to
I kind of
spend.
wonder if that would do it.
That was the answer.
Just want to see me get some exercise, didn't
You
you?
could confirm it, I guess. Do you confirm? Okay.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay. So that could be, of course, next year's budget, and the year after, I mean, I'm saying we can adjust for that. But when will this actual report or software payment evaluation take place? Do we have you got an answer for that?
Do get to answer a question.
Okay.
Yes. I found out this afternoon, so Brian, I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to fill you in on this. All of the data has been collected, and it's in the hands of Michelin Mobility now. Excuse me. To do that, to assign that pavement condition for us. Once we receive that data back, we'll be able to start building our plan.
Okay.
And that, obviously, when that data comes back to us, that will have a very high priority to get done.
Great. I like that. Good idea for that plan. Thank you.
Yep.
Sorry. So, and just to point back to the initial conversation about the revenues, the streams that come to us for the revenues here are really nothing we have control over, right? And so eventually we'll have to make some decisions on how that money gets spent, planned, prioritized, and for which projects are going to be able to for the revenue that comes in annually. Other questions?
And could you hit on again what the difference was between that 250 move to commodities for maintenance and repair, and then that 200 is to kind of create a fund balance, so once this report's done, we hopefully have a larger amount and can tackle the larger projects?
No, it's really just to give you budget authority in any one given year. So it's in these special revenue funds, unlike your general fund, if the money is not used or that budget authority isn't used in any one year, it rolls up to the beginning fund balance of the next year, always to be used within this special streets fund. So the only reason that it's in there is if I didn't put it in there, you would be limited to exactly what that expenditure bottom line is. And if you had a project come up, for example, last year when we wanted to and then it's not this fund, but in our special parks fund, in order to order that playground equipment and get the 50% grant or have grant match dollars available, if we didn't have the expenditure authority, the budget authority to do so, we wouldn't have been able to take advantage of that. In the streets fund, it would be the same way. Or if you were to have a streets project that became an instant priority that needed to be repaired or something done that we hadn't planned on, you need to have that budget authority available. And that is a common practice. It's not something that we've done here often or in a lot of the past years in Ottawa, because I think I understand that the feeling was more towards that if it wasn't planned, then we should have a conversation about it and be able to determine if we wanted to spend those dollars. But in reality, the budget authority that you have through this process doesn't eliminate the conversation with you about what should be the priority and how do we get the things done that need to be done. Instead, it gives you the ability to make a decision more quickly, and also, I guess, still be able to follow those the budget law and guidelines, and not have to do a public hearing for a budget amendment in order to just go to get a project done that absolutely needs to be done. So that's what it's doing. It's giving you budget authority. It does not have a planned expenditure attached to it. The $200,000 that I have there. It really could have been the entire amount. It could have been $1,043,758. We could have put all of that into that reserve line to give you all of the maximum authority that you needed in any one year. And in a lot of funds, it's okay to do that. And in here, we just haven't in the past historically done that. And I don't know that $200,000 gets you another project or an emergency repair. And if we want to make it, give that budget authority for the full amount so that, something can happen if need be, we can do that too.
Yeah, similarly to the mayor, $200,000, $250,000 just doesn't go a long way. As I'm sure Director Hafley's astutely aware, that does not get very far. And I think getting our inventory is great. Thinking that we're looking at 18 months out for this budget cycle. That was just kind of my question in terms of, some of those larger projects that we're going to have coming up, kind of, a longer term plan for those kind of things.
Certainly. And keep in mind, so with our earlier conversation about this fund will be more redirected towards the maintenance projects, not necessarily your really large capital projects. And that's where the distinction or difference is. Before it was budgeted and not that you probably care about the detail part of this, but a 700 line item, which is a capital improvement, a capital investment, so something that's a really large project. And by moving it to commodities section, the note there specifically, one is to alert you that in the detail that you received, that it's been moved. And so if you're not looking for it where it was in the past, but also to more indicate that it's more of a maintenance cost and not necessarily a large capital venture. So it's not something you're going to see in your CIP other than maybe a maintenance plan that we might provide out to you as a capital active project update. Instead, the maintenance side as opposed to the large capital project. But I'm happy, and we'll, City Manager Selcott and I can talk about his comfort level as well, but we're happy to budget whatever you want in there for your budget authority, remembering that in any one fund, in any one special revenue fund, if it doesn't have cash, it can't be spent anyway. So it really doesn't limit us one way or the other.
And to help put into perspective, every 3 to 6 years, every road should have some sort of sealant, penetrator, rejuvenator applied to it so that you're able to go 40 plus years before you need a full depth reconstruction at some point. So with that in mind, that's why we're trying to build fund balance and triage our road systems so that we can begin to see what needs to be addressed first, because believe it or not, it's actually the new roads or the newer roads, because that's where, when you look at your degradation curve of the pavement and our investment, where you're going to get the longevity of that investment to those dollars spent, rather than some of the older roads that are going to require significantly more rehabilitation. So that's part of why we wanted to do this. And when we get into our road project and road management, we'll show you some curves on investment and life cycle costing. So, but it's not cheap, as you know. So, thank
Well,
you.
and commissioners, it's not just staff's shoulders that it all lies on, it's ours. I mean, I don't think there's a person here that doesn't agree with $250,000 is not enough. But if it's not, we gotta either find a way to get it or raise taxes to get it. So if that's a conversation that we need to have, let's have it. I mean, I'm not saying now, but we're in budget season, so.
That's true, 'cause some of the biggest complaints we seem to hear are the roads are terrible shape, and then they don't want to pay more taxes, and those two ideals run divergently to one another, and so, yeah, it's kind of that challenge to get what we can out of it. But anyway, that's what I've thought too, yeah, we need more money in that department, but like you said, let's wait for the evaluation, then maybe we can make a better determination. Although we need to agree to this amount through this budget season, so maybe the timing's not gonna work for us exactly this year for that,
I would say, given what you're talking about now, I think that we should increase that reserve, giving you the budget authority to spend over the next year, and then come back and evaluate how that were to be spent, and or where those revenue sources are going to come from, other than just the fund balance and the current revenue streams that are there. Because in any one given year, even if you spend more than 250, if your fund balance is down to, once you've spent down what you have here, right now your revenue is only, sitting at just about 500,000 a year. And that's up from in previous years. And that assumes that the state will continue the FFE program, which, I don't know that that's necessarily a guaranteed program. I don't know that we've heard otherwise, of course, but that's a portion of, or about half of that revenue there. Other questions on that? We'll make adjustments on our end.
And that 85,000 debt service ends in 2027, is that correct? Or is that 2030?
I'm sorry, I flipped my sheet already.
Okay.
1 second here.
I think I found it, I think that's.
Yes, it matures in 2030.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And I was not able, in the last second, I thought about looking to see exactly what that was used for, but it was traffic ways and sidewalks related to a larger project that was done in 2014.
And I haven't looked through all of these yet. Is the sidewalk fund in here? Because I know looking at last year, we had a $50,000 adopted transfer to that from roads.
Thank you for mentioning that. So it's not in here. In the past, historically, the sidewalks were quote unquote funded from the special streets fund. However, it was, you can have streets or you can have sidewalks, but it was very difficult to be able to do both, maintenance for both of those things within this limited amount of revenue. So we did create a sidewalk fund. It'll be a capital improvement fund that we are transferring money to. And we did transfer a little bit of money from special streets in the past year, but we determined that it would be in our best interest to keep all of the special streets money in the special streets fund and find another revenue stream to be able to do sidewalk repair. At this point in time, last year, we made the transfer from the general fund. There were some dollars that were set aside for streets and sidewalks and grant matching type of line item, and so that money was transferred to the sidewalks fund, and we'll bring that CIP fund and the plan for that to you next week. Anything else on special streets?
I just, before we go on, want to just touch on the point Commissioner Crowley made. I think we need to have the conversation at some point. It's not going to be fun. Where do we get money from? But I think it's in our best interest to have a serious conversation in terms of what we are going to do on roads. This roads plan, something along those lines, because, even looking at this $500,000, $400,000 just does not get us to where we are going to need to be to improve roads, maintain roads, and do that adequately. I do not think. That's my opinion. I will defer to the Director of Public Works on that, but I think we need to have that conversation up here at this table at some point.
I would agree.
Certainly.
Good point. right, next.
All right. Our next fund is our special alcohol fund. This one is a little bit of a more limited fund. So your revenue that comes in here is simply 1/3 of the liquor tax that comes to the city, and the expenditures that we've assigned to this fund in the past have been a transfer to the general fund to offset the salary of an officer with the police department that is assigned to DARE activities or drug and alcohol prevention. So that is really all that is available within this fund. So typically we bring in about 35,000. That has increased just slightly. And so in my budget highlights, I noted that it's potential in 25 and 26 that we would be able to move 38,000 per year. But just looking, that does still keep just a small balance in this fund. And assuming that you want to continue to offset the cost of the DARE program within the general fund expenditures, then this transfer is about all that can be managed from here for now. If we want to have conversations about using it for something else, we're happy to talk about that as well.
Okay, any other questions on special alcohol? All right, I guess we keep on moving on.
All right, the risk management fund. This fund is used for our insurance and our commercial property, and we had recent conversations about our flood insurance and how that impacted what's happening in this fund. So the very first thing I want to remind us is that this fund only has a revenue stream by transfers from the general fund, the water fund, the wastewater fund, and the electric fund. So it is not funded 100% by property tax dollars, and I think that's important to know right up front. And then in these budget highlights, really, this is a summary of what we discussed in the memo, or that was assigned to, or in the packet, I'm sorry, with all of the detail and the conversations that Director Stegman has had with you about just our insurance policies overall. So, and if I misstep in quoting these things, I've asked her to please correct me. So she is the expert in this area, and I know she knows this better than I do. So we did establish that in the detail, you should see a transfer line item for the amount of the savings from the flood insurance change that would go to the capital improvement fund specifically for future flood damages for the properties that weren't covered under flood insurance. And you see that over the next 3 years, or for 24, 25, and 26. And the way that we calculated that is the amount of savings from this year, and then increased it, I believe, by 5% over the next couple of years, just to make sure that we had an adequate amount in there. Of course, we won't, by removing those properties from that flood insurance, we won't know exactly what that increase would have been, but that's kind of our historical look at those increases. The average overall increase to our property casualty policies was just over 8%. Overall, some of it was less, some of it was more, but the average overall was 8%. The property policy itself increased by 44% in part because of the increased replacement values, and then also due to, the overall insurance. You may have to step up here. The overall insurance had to do with the marketplace conditions, and some of the things that are noted in here, those conditions are related to the frequency and severity of the claims, inflation, and the cyber threats and disasters. You want to talk more about that?
So the actual property policy increased 44%, and that was due to some of our properties, we had to increase the replacement cost to the actual replacement cost. Some of those policy values went up 6%, some of them went 10%. So that third bullet that's what that actually meant. And as far as our claims loss, that The ratio is a comparison of what we actually pay for our actual policies compared to claims. And right now, based on our analysis, we're doing very well on our losses. But increases primarily are due to marketplace conditions and increases to property values.
I assume they look at that casualty puzzle, the ratio you're mentioning when they price our insurance, right? That we're unfavorably viewed.
Yes, and we switched to travelers for most of our policies in 2022, so we're in our third year, so I would assume we'd go out to market.
Okay.
Or in 2025. And the policy year begins for most of our policies April 1st, as you recall.
Okay. The only other question I had on the these undesignated, I guess, stability overlay, 150,000. That was.
Yep. And this is exactly what we talked about in the other funds. It's really there to give you that spending authority should you need out of that bottom line. While we don't anticipate that, this is one of those funds. These are the things that you don't have control over, right? The times that insurance comes into play are things that you didn't plan for. So we think that we've adequately planned in our expenditure lines. A lot of times you'll see us budget for these line items and then not necessarily have expenditures in this fund. That's a great thing because we're planning for the worst and hoping for the best. And typically we've been very thankful that we've been able to return money back to the bottom line and roll over to the beginning fund balance each year. But in those cases, and especially because those replacement costs have gone up, the deductibles are not small for claims, and then it's the what ifs and the what happens when that we try to accomplish with this budget. I will note that in 25 and 26, we do show that those transfers would increase by 10% for each one of the contributing funds. The reason we did that is because when we first put this together, we weren't necessarily loving the trend line for the fund balance overall, and that over time, and we're looking out multiple years beyond what you see on the screen, we didn't feel like it was going to stay at a level where we were most comfortable. And so, and we have not increased those transfers from each of the funds for several years. And so we planned that 10% increase for each one of those. Now, as a side note, we mentioned when we talked to you about the utility funds, of course, there's other decision points coming down the road. These are one of those times when we are looking at these funds, and we'll have to go back and make adjustments to those budgeted line items and whatnot that we've already presented to you once. So when we bring our final budget presentation back to you, those will be shown in there. And we'll make note of that then as well. Any other questions on risk management?
Do you know on the mechanical breakdown insurance, is that covering essentially the operating parts of power plant, the water plant? Is that the mechanical components within the buildings?
So the mechanical breakdown policy, there's one for Chubb, so that is, let's see, transformers, the units 6 and 7, those types of pieces of equipment. And then there's another policy that's like for boilers, the boiler here and the boiler at the auditorium.
Okay. But that is, yeah, separate from a structure, so it's kind of like
Yes.
we're ensuring a structure and then the things within it.
Yes.
As well. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, anybody have from risk management? Guess we'll move on.
All right, our next fund is the Economic Development Fund. This fund supports the city's development expense for financing the engineering and contractual fees for permit fees and revenue from the development incentive transactions, and that entire program related to just economic development itself. The revenues that come into this fund are generated from incentive origination fees, like from your IRB origination fees, or the administration fees that we capture from each year from an annual refund or rebate off of, say, a TIF district. And then also there's the T-Mobile rent fees for the tower space comes into this fund. as well as there's a line for reimbursements that you see where if we have a development agreement with someone who's installing public infrastructure in their new development, and they pay for our city engineer for construction observation, we pay that up front. They turn around and reimburse us for it. That's why the reimbursement line is there. Our expenses have not been large other than this fund pays for the city engineer expenses for all of our development costs. So everything that runs through the planning department, review of the plans, the other construction observation for city projects, all of those types of expenses run through this fund as well. The couple of things that the items that I want to just bring to your attention are, we talked about this capital improvement fund, and it does not have a revenue stream. And we know that we have capital improvement projects that are coming down the road, and we really need to kickstart that fund so that we can start setting aside dollars to reserve for those projects and then plan accordingly. And the way we've proposed in here is that we make two $100,000 transfers, one in at the end of '24, because we will, as projected, have enough budget authority to do so in '24, and then again in '25. But after that, we're not proposing making any more transfers until we know exactly where this fund is going to end up. Now, we don't have everything recorded in here. For example, we have outstanding IRBs right now. You heard about one earlier. We haven't received that origination fee yet because that happens at the time of issuance. And so there's some revenues that aren't necessarily accounted for in here because of the timing, and so they're not really reflected in your ending fund balance. But if we're able and capable with a solid ending fund balance, then in future years we could consider another transfer. And the reason that makes sense from here is because those dollars are coming in from projects that are impacting your public infrastructure, your streets, all of the other projects, and setting those dollars aside to be used for those types of projects. They're linked together. They're not linked because you wouldn't be able to fund any one of those projects out of this fund particularly, but it would be a revenue stream for that CIP fund. Do you have questions about this economic development fund?
I guess not.
Thank you.
Oh, go ahead.
The other contractual services that you said, that is separate from planning and development code review, or was that position? Or not position, I guess, that contract? Or is this more reviewing in terms of?
No, that other contractual is the city engineer fees that we pay for review of plans. So the revenue for those permits are coming into the general fund, but the expenditures related to all of the plan review and the outside of what our city planner does, and coordination with the DRC meetings, and then pre-construction meetings with the developer, all of those things are charged out of this other contractual line item.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Other questions? No?
Good.
Okay. All right, this fund is the opioid settlement fund, and we did just put this in place, I believe, last year. It was a new fund for us, and this was it allocates the settlement payments from the Kansas Fights Addiction Act to prevent, reduce, treat, or mitigate substance abuse and addiction. And when we first put this in place, we knew that we were participating. I had joined in this settlement process, but weren't exactly sure what those dollars were going to be coming to us. So we received an amount last year. We've received an additional amount this year. As a commission or as a group, we have not decided exactly how these dollars are going to be used. So what I've presented to you here is just an opportunity to have that discussion, and when that decision's made, it would give you the budget authority to be able to spend the full amount that we have at that time. The caveat there is, I can't give you any more budget authority than I have cash available at this time. And we don't know what else might come into us, or at least I don't know what else might come into us yet this year or next year. So if there are additional revenues that come in and you intend to spend those in 2025, this is one of those funds that would require a budget amendment to do so at this point. It's just giving you the authority to spend what we know is available at this point in time.
So when did we spend it this year?
We did not spend anything this year.
Okay, we just had a contractual service.
That's just a
31.
reserve.
That's a
It's,
reserve.
in the detail line item, you can see that it's just reserved to give you the budget authority to spend, should we make a decision on how to do so.
Well, I saw this too. I was wondering maybe this would be something we can talk about later, but ELC's requested an increase from their community services budget, and perhaps this would fit in line with what they offer our community as well. So just as a point of reference for the other commissioners to think about.
This is Commissioner Kaler speaking. I actually sit on the Kansas Fights Addiction Board of Directors for the entire state. There are many, many caveats to it. And honestly, Mayor Skidmore, I do not believe that's an allowed. You can't transfer money like that. You need to spend money in a different way. I did want to bring up that I actually do have a Kansas Fights Addiction Board meeting tomorrow, and we should be given a forecast of allocations that are becoming up. They're going to be tremendously smaller, but there are a few settlements that are still out there that are being litigated right now. And that board finds those, or we receive those dollars and then we allocate those dollars out. So I should be able to, Melanie, to give you a better estimate after Friday's meeting.
That's great. Thanks, Commissioner Kaler, for serving on that and let us know what you come up with. That sounds great.
Hey, Commissioner Kaler, can you give us some sort of ideas of what these funds could be spent on?
Yeah, there is actually a whole, I mean, this is some federal stuff that came down, and so I could read it to you, but we would definitely be here till about 8:30
Just
tonight.
a few options,
so
please.
Let me pull that up if you'd like, and I'll read that to you. Or what I can do is I can actually just present it to you at another time. I'm driving, so I'm unable to really do that at this time, but I'm happy to present information about it. I've talked to Chief Weingartner about applying for additional funds that could support our community for people who are directly affected by opioids. And there are all kinds of opportunities. And actually, I've talked to Elizabeth Layton Center, too, about applying for grant funds. What we receive is a very small portion of the monies that are allocated and available to the entire state of Kansas from opioid settlement money.
Great. All right. Thanks, Commissioner Kaler. Let us know on that. Appreciate that.
Yes, and so once I hear back from her, then I will make changes to what, based on what we think may come in. And again, this would be one of those times when, if it doesn't come, or if the timing isn't quite right, you can't spend anything more than what your cash is that's available. But having the budget authority to spend what might be coming in would be incredibly helpful. So that's fantastic.
Okay. How about land bank?
All right, on the land bank fund. So as you know, we've had some activity in the land bank fund in prior years, and at the close of a lot of that activity, we had determined that we would transfer out a large balance there to support a portion of the purchase of the golf course, and then leave a remaining balance in here to keep this fund open for opportunities that come up for use of the land bank. And so that's what you see here, that rolling $10,000 and $303. The three, I can't make it go away, so I apologize that that's not a rounded number. But when I put this together, I can tell you that definitely irritated me. So this is here really as just give the budget authority to be able to spend those dollars should the need arise, and also just to keep the land bank fund open. Otherwise, we don't have any planned purchases and also no planned revenue.
Good. All right, anybody questions on anything we've talked about here today, Melanie? A lot to digest here, so thank you, Melanie. Good job.
All right, thank you so much.
Let's go on to some comments by our city manager.
And thanks to Melanie and her entire finance team for putting that together for us. I'll make this short and sweet. Just wanted to make you aware that we're currently striping several segments of our arterials. That's about just under $50,000 to do so. It's several thousand feet in yellow center line, 32,700, and another 21,875 for the edging, which is the white stripes along the side. And you can see on the map the red segments that indicate where this is occurring.
Mr. Silcock?
Yes.
I've noticed they did that, or is there any, in the future, near future, will they be doing this, the parking spaces on Main Street also?
Yes, we would like to eventually hit the parking spaces as well as what's called thresholds. So where you would see stops at signals, or particularly as we're approaching the school year, we'll want to be out here in July and August, hitting not just the crosswalks around the schools, but we want to make sure that all of the crosswalks are being addressed, as well as repainting and striping of our bike lanes as that occurs as well. So it is something that we know we need to address, and will continue to do so as a priority. We don't have a master plan at this stage to do so, but we know that it's something that we want to start downtown and then begin the ancillary parking lots on either side. So like along Walnut and along Hickory here. So also you'll notice where the bike paths are, the bike lanes. There's additional what's called intermittent threshold markings, which are kind of those little sawtooth type indicators as well. So, I think most of those are still in good shape, but we will be going through and conducting a full assessment.
So possibly some more later on this year?
Yes.
Okay.
And we'll want to, in all likelihood, look to do that in the autumn after the car show.
And it looks great if you drive down Main now. It just really makes the other ones show that they're not marked at all. So, I mean, wonderful job. I just really like the all of them.
How about on Eisenhower, since that's a city line, do we share that with the county, or is that something we do it every other time? Or half a stripe, or how do
That's
we-
all in the city there, that
That is on the
segment.
city?
Yes.
Okay, I thought Eisenhower, okay, good enough.
On.
Oh,
on
go
that-
ahead. Left lane, right lane? What? That little segment there?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we don't share that expense with the county. So the city limit starts at 13th, and that's what we maintain. We've never had any kind of an agreement with the county to share any expenses or trade off any expenses from 7th to 13th. So
I see, because north of 13th, that's
This is
county.
unincorporated right here.
I got you. So the county covers that.
Correct.
And we're
Yes.
All right, gotcha. Thank you. Good.
Mr. Silcott, just to clarify, it looks like on the map, North Wilson is on there. It looks like, and I just didn't see it in the description. I wasn't sure which was the source of truth, the map.
I would have to go back and see if I missed something in because I compiled that information. So I'll let you know just as soon as I get away from the podium.
Okay, thank you.
And reminder for our concert series, we'll have another on the 18th and the 25th, and of course the July 4th festivities coming up in Forest Park as well. Reminder for our Fishing with the Firefighter, Beaten Oilers Cocks, and then head over to the detention ponds there at the water plant. And there are fish in there. So, highlighting our June activities for the week of the 10th through the 14th at our library. And then just reminding everyone of our next, we'll have the continued special revenue fund. So we'll have the golf course fund and the sidewalk fund. And we'll have numbers here June 15th, plus or minus a couple of days since it's on the weekend. So maybe a little earlier, maybe a little later. We get final numbers. And then upcoming items, we'll have that continued discussion. Our May finance report, Juneteenth, capital projects update, and receive and file a report on our city's comprehensive planning process for 2024 to 2034, which is replacing the 2004 adopted comprehensive plan. And with that, I will turn it over to the commission if there are no further questions for myself or another member of the team.
Okay, any other questions anybody have? I think we're, thank you, Brian. Good. Let's go on to the comments by the city commissioners. Let's start with Commissioner Crowley,
I have no comment.
Commissioner Clayton,
No comment.
Commissioner Kaler.
And at this time, thank you.
Okay, and Pro Tem Allen.
No comment.
Okay, good. And I don't have anything either. I just want to say how pleased I am to see the splash pad doing well. We got the sod added to it today, I believe, and we're going to look at expanding the hours to that because it's going to be hot tomorrow. So everybody get down there, splash pad, and cool off tomorrow evening. It'll be open a little bit later. That'll be helpful for everybody, I think. So nothing else to come before the city. Let's look at the, here we go. Next city commission meeting will be June 5th. That's already happened. Anyway, June 12th has already happened too, right? Okay. We'll have one sometime in the future.
June 19th.
There we go, what she said. All right.
10 a.m.
Anything, yeah.